Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Success Life Live, an author talk. I apologize for the earlier on and off kind of thing. Sometimes Facebook jumps in and bounces out and gives a signal and drops a signal, but you know what? We make it work. We're flexible. We're adaptable. So good evening, everybody, and good morning, Aunt Deb, and hello, Barb. Good to have you in the room. So tonight we're doing author talk, and I love author talk because I get to read the book, and then I get to call the author and be like, "Tell me what you meant here. Tell me what you meant there." And so it's kind of like almost getting the book and the coaching all in one. So Barb will be jumping in and joining us here in a minute. Good evening, Bobby Sachs. Love your new kitchen pictures, by the way. Did a fabulous job with those. But that's what you do. I see, Barb, you're in the room, and I'll invite you here in just a sec. As we get the room warmed up and get it started, remember that the best way to help authors is to encourage them by sharing this video out and going out. So I had the link for the book posted. It ended up in the other video. It's slightly down below. Or you can go to Amazon and look up the book, Permission to Be Bold, and you'll find it quick as a link. Good evening, Miss Julie. I hope you are doing well. I'm going to jump on and go ahead and invite Barb into the room. Again, this is Author Talk with Success Life Live, where we sit down and we talk with an author who has written a book in that thinking, growth-minded space, in that personal development or business success, so that you can get some insight. If you're like me, often you'll go to the bookstore, you'll be on Amazon, and you'll be scrolling through titles, and you're like, oh, I don't know, which one should I get? I've only got so much time. This is one you should get. And in a few minutes after meeting Barb, you'll understand why. So let me go ahead and invite her into the room. Dun, dun, dun. Test drove it the other night, so we know that her side of the technology is working well. My side of the technology acted foolish this morning, or just a minute ago. Ta-da! You're here.
Yay!
It worked.
It worked.
You did a fabulous job on the test drive, and I bet you've been telling everybody, look what I learned, look what I learned, huh?
You made it easy, Eric.
Well, hey, we both got bold together. So
That's
Barbara,
right.
and I keep saying Barb, and I know that people with nicknames like have those names get upset. So I apologize first and foremost for keep shortening your name. Barbara Valentine Gustavson.
That is good. Yeah, I actually grew up with the name Barbie, so family and friends call me Barbie. I get called Barb, and then Barbara is all good.
I have one of those names that it's just Eric. Like, you can't really do a whole lot with it. Maybe make one sound, but that's about it. And so I always was jealous of my friends that could have multiple names. It's like, yeah, I can be Barbie today, or I can be Barbara.
There you go. You can be Barbie
first,
today.
Thank you for being part of Author Talk. Thank you for allowing me to read your book and to dive in and get to know you and the book and your journey.
Absolutely. I have enjoyed listening to you in the past, and I've been following you with other authors, and I just really appreciate where you take the conversation. So I was especially excited about
well,
tonight.
thank you. I'm switching up a little here, just talk to the audience, tell them who you are, why I sort of changed there we go. I felt like it was leaning out of the room.
You got it? There he goes.
So one of the challenges, and we have a lot of people online, and everybody take a moment and say hello. I know Barbara can't see you where she's at, but she'll be able to come back during the replay and comment and talk to you directly, and I'll forward any questions you might have. One of the challenges that a lot of us have, and you're a member of the John Maxwell team, you've been a founding member. So,
Yeah.
Many of them have come to this, like, I've got so much to share. I've got a journey I want to express. My goal is to impact people's lives, to make a difference, to leave a legacy. And I think it's somewhat ironic that your book is titled Permission to Be Bold, Leaving Your Mark on the World. Talk about that idea of could I be a writer to becoming a writer?
Wow. Yeah. And so when I joined the world of coaching, I would say, a place of a lot of stuckness, meaning I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to make a difference. And so when I joined that world of personal development, it was really to grow myself in about 3 months, and I just gravitated towards the coaching lane. I realized that was my natural tendency and where a lot of my strengths lied. So ironically though, when you're coaching, you also are thrown into the speaking world just to, share about what you're doing. And that was my greatest fear. And I was one of those, I said I would never speak in public. I remember running off the stage a couple of times in high school, and here I was speaking to people. And I was starting at ground zero. So I had not really built those skills up yet. So I found myself in a place of terror many times, just trying to open my mouth and get the words out. And so it did not come easy for me. It has been a process, a long process. But I realized about 4 years into that I really felt that God had this calling in my life to live more boldly. And I had fought it for many years by hiding behind things like staying busy, behind my roles as a mom. While those were the biggest investments I had made, I had also used those positions to not use my strengths. So it was very frustrating that I felt this calling of living boldly because I did want to hide. It was much easier. But once I really owned the fact that God had a bigger purpose for my life, I realized, okay, God, you're going to have to show me the way. If you made this calling, you're going to have to show me step by step because I absolutely can't do it on my own. And I'm terrified. So I began journaling a lot of my thoughts and doing it in a way where I wasn't putting just words on the page, but really allowing God to speak through
Mm-hmm.
through the pen. And so creating this blank space and asking questions like, why did you make me, this way? Why did you make it so difficult for me to share I just was very raw and just very open with how I journaled, and the answers that started to unlock for me were pivotal. I started by using these very just concrete steps that I feel that God gave me, and just started taking those steps of action. They didn't make sense sometimes, but as I moved forward, they started locking together, kind of like a thousand-piece
What
puzzle. Just all these little pieces started
what I
coming
loved,
together.
what I
And I was
loved,
like,
and because I don't want to skip over this. So you entered the journey, you had a vision. I'm going to go into coaching. This is going to be what I want to do. This is not what I'm going to do, but this is what I'm going to do. And it took 4 years for it to finally start to really settle into who you became. And I think that's interesting because so
yeah.
often I think we
Mhm.
walk out of the big event, whatever it might be, thinking, tomorrow I'm going to be top of the stage, big of the world, front of the newspaper, famous. But we haven't learned to master that voice in the small, quiet spaces, one on one with clients, in our own personal journeys. And then I love the way you described it as you began to say, okay, I'm beginning to understand what my voice is, boldness, being bold, permission to be bold, but I don't understand how it's impacting me or how I need to grow into it. And then what are the logical steps? And so I love that idea that you first experienced it, then tested it, then wrote about it, and then began to share it.
Yeah, and I feel like that was part of the process I was supposed to go through. I look back and I realize I was not meant to skip certain steps. I was meant to go through this messy process. As much as it sucked, I can now look back and realize that's been part of my journey. And I honor that. Even the uncomfortableness, the times I felt like I had no confidence, I needed to go through that to really build a strong foundation of what I call, my boldness. And for me, when I look at bold, I'm no longer just seeing the outward, the big achievements, all that's nice, but for me, it's fleeting if there isn't an inner growth process. So for me, bold is really an inner transformation. It's a mindset, it's laying that groundwork, and it's really a discovery process of different things. And when you tie the internal and external together, for me, it's more enriching and
So how
significant.
would you, so bold is not brave. How are the two different?
Yeah, so that's a good question, one that I've really been just kind of stirring around, the kind of the pot in my mind, because I do see boldness tied into bravery, into courage, into perseverance, things like that. So when I look at the definition, like if you go to a dictionary, it's mostly external steps, taking huge, heroic steps, grandiose leaps. There are a couple at the very bottom that has things like thinking different, using your imagination to create something new. So for me, that became that bold. But I really do see it tied together with some of these other words, bravery. But boldness for me is also drawing that line in the sand, saying, I'll fall down and I'll get back up, but I am not going back to where I was. This is the way it's going to be moving forward. And so for me, I had to really give myself permission to do that, because we hear the word intentionality a lot, living your life intentional. I think that can be an umbrella term for a lot of
Ooh,
specific things. And for me, the very, very first step of intentionality was giving myself permission, validating myself, to embrace. Otherwise, I could make these steps forward, but there's this resistance that's pulling me back because I haven't fully permitted. I'm not all in. I haven't fully committed to that process. There's a part of me, I want that thing, but there's still this part of me that's hanging back to
so
where it
the
was.
so I love the idea that you had to give yourself permission. And I think often we're the last person to give ourselves permission. I know your support network. I know they were probably giving you permission slip after permission slip after gold framed permission slip to go out and live your boldness and be who you were. Why is it harder for us to sometimes take the permission slips from ourselves versus from others? What stopped you from just buying into their beliefs and going boldly forward?
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because I've had a lot of people believe in me, things that they saw about me that I didn't see about myself. Um, for me, it went way back to almost feeling guilty for, and the term I've heard, we may have heard of the term survivor's guilt. And I've heard that people can sometimes struggle this with, there's a certain family dynamics. Either there's a physical, emotional struggle in the family, and then there's a sibling who doesn't quite have that struggle. And sometimes they feel guilty for doing well just because they're afraid of how much their family member is suffering. And I won't go into all the dynamics of that, but that's something that I've struggled with. I've felt guilty for doing well, as crazy as that sounds, because I wanted to do well, but I only allowed myself to go so far, just kind of bare minimum, doing well. I had a very successful job in the corporate world. But beyond that, I didn't allow myself to do it because I felt guilty. I felt guilty for shining my light, um, afraid to toot my own horn because I didn't want to look like a braggart or someone who didn't have humility. So I had a lot of stuff wrapped in my mind of what I thought it should be. And once I understood what was happening, it was still a challenge because I had not learned how to build more healthy thoughts at that point. And that's been a process for me. So giving myself permission, I mean, I literally, this sounds kind of, crazy, but I have this stack of permission slips that I printed out and I chopped them up and I filled one out every day. Today, I will give myself permission to do the hard thing, or today I will give myself permission to take a day off or have that difficult conversation, you know, whatever it was for that day, I had to tangibly
And
see that.
I want you guys to hear this clearly. So often we try and change who we are internally. Like, well, I need to feel this before I take that action. Or, we get so caught up in the self-healing piece that we never give our permission to move beyond. I was listening to somebody the other day and they said, are you stuck in wound therapy? Where you're constantly dealing with the wound and being
Mm.
attached to the wound instead of just simply moving beyond it as it relates to our history, that maybe taking physical action of printing out a permission slip and saying, today I give myself permission to read a book I enjoy for 10 minutes, to go walk by myself for 30 minutes, to like the things that are going to transform your life that you've denied yourself access to. You've got to take some external action. And I think that's where, as I read through this, I began to understand that boldness is not as much attached to feeling as maybe bravery is. That boldness is acting without feeling sometimes. Like, oh, I said I'm going to do this. I got to be bold and just get it done. Like, I just,
Mm.
like, the determination factor was higher. That sometimes I think we need, I love that permission slip idea. Like, I give my self permission to cry today. I give myself permission to laugh,
Mm.
to bitch at the world, whatever it is you need to begin to move forward into your journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. One of the little examples I use in the story, that silly game that a lot of us, if we're old enough to remember, Mother May I, we have the designated mother, and, we had all the children, and we would ask the mother, may I take, one leap forward or backwards and stuff. And I know that's a silly game, but I look back in my life where I depended on people for the simplest thing. Can I do this? And when we're younger, that makes sense. We had our parents who wanted our best interest to protect us, our teachers. But if we continue to seek that that permission from people, the older we get, that's where we kind of get stuck. And what I found was I was still playing Mother May I with my life, but it was not just a yes or no for permission's sake. It was tied to the validation that I sought from those people. And that was key for me because I realized I don't need the validation. It's nice to get it, it really is. But I don't need the validation from anybody but myself. And for me, as a spiritual person from God, He's already validated me. So it's really dependent on me to allow myself and permit myself to move forward.
I think we sometimes
Otherwise,
play that
I'd be
Mother May
waiting.
I game too with the image that we're supposed to be. Like, we have this perfect image of who
Mm.
we're supposed to be as a parent, as a spouse, as a coach, as a employee, and it's like, okay, is the behavior that I'm seeking in alignment with that image that I'm trying to maintain? Do I have permission to deviate from that fake mask image that I've been carrying for so long? And if I do, what will it look like?
Ooh, yeah, the masks. Yeah, the masks have been the hardest thing, and I am still in process. My masks go up, and I've had some that have been pretty super glued on perfection, a smile on my face. Um, just because sometimes it's easier to put it on than to be real. And I think because I had my mask on so long, I really didn't know who I was. I had not really connected with myself before. So that has been a process to go through. I have a good friend who has a wonderful way of looking at masks instead of trying to rip it off, just give it a persona and just recognize there's times where it's going to come off and there's times where it's just going to, like Jim Carrey's movie, The Mask, it's just going to suck right back on your face. And as much as you pull it off, it won't come off at the time, but just realize, I don't have to try to pull and yank so hard, but I can really focus my energy on something new. And, for me, that was really finding what my unique purpose was and focus on that. And just realizing by taking my focus off that, the mask came off much
And
easier.
I do, and I agree that I think we need masks. Sometimes they're survival skills. Sometimes they're things that we're still learning. So we're kind of in the dress rehearsal mode versus the internalized mode. And the more you struggle against the mask, the less you learn about why you're in the mask. And so if you can just slow down long enough
Mm.
and like, okay, I realize that I'm masking. I'm with my family. It's Thanksgiving dinner. This always turns out ugly. I need to put on this mask to get through the dinner. It's a survival mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. Whatever it is, I recognize it, and I need to go home and learn skills that will prepare me for next year's Thanksgiving dinner. There's nothing wrong with going through it that way. It's when we get trapped behind it and we stop analyzing it. So going into the permission slips and bold actions, and by the way, everybody that's jumping in, and you've got, I think, half your family and half of JMT here, everybody wishing you great success on your book. We're going over the book, Permission to be Bold, A Guide to Loving Yourself, Living Fully, and Leaving Your Mark on the World. And Barbara Gustafson is here with us. It's available on Amazon, and the link is down below for that as well, you guys. And we're talking about bold actions and giving yourself permission to be bold. I really love the book, by the way. What I liked about we talked about this yesterday, how you have both a story and then you have a homework assignment and then you have a reflection period. So for people that I consume a lot. And so I love having those summary pages, those homework, those recentering pages at the end of a chapter, but I also like getting lost in people's story. And so you did a beautiful job of allowing me to see the Mother May I, that tall poppies, the other examples and stories of what it looks like, and then coaching me through how to change my life through it. So well done on that. It's not, yeah, it's both hard and light reading all in the same sentence.
What I did, the way I read books, I'm a bottom line person. I'm a little bit ADD too. I love the Cliff Note version. So I actually included that in the book. At the very end, there's something called the Bold Manifesto. And as you're reading that, that's actually a summary of all the chapters. And then I have key takeaways and questions. But yeah, I just felt like I had to put that in because I wish other books had the Cliff Note version too.
I have a special pen that when I highlight it, downloads into my computer, so that when I finish a book, I just print out those notes and I stick them in the back. So next time I want to read it, I just grab that those.
Oh, that's a great tool. I haven't seen that. That's
it's
awesome.
nice because I mean I think John Maxwell said like only 20% of his books are really worth remembering. The rest he just has to put in there for the publisher, and so I don't feel bad.
Well, he also said, I don't know if you remember this, he says your first, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I will, your first book is probably going to suck. So you might as well write it and get
So
it
this
out of the
must be
way.
your third or fourth
So
book.
no, it's my first book, but it was great. I had a wonderful team help me. I had so many eyes looking at this, just because it's been a 4-year process. It started out as journals, and then about 2 years in, I realized, wow, there's some connection here. And up until then, I had really no desire to write a book. It was like a flame turned on inside me, and I'm like, okay, let's do that. But I need lots of help, so I was really grateful for
I
the
know
team
you
I had.
had Charlie's wife. I saw that in here.
Oh, she was amazing. Yeah, Stephanie helped build a blueprint. She basically took my brain dump. I was like, here, and she made sense of it. She got my message, so I
Yeah,
was thrilled.
Stephanie is fabulous, and Charlie. Well, we know what Charlie does every day. I just actually have his newest book,
Yes.
which is oh gosh, I forgot the title. Anyhow, it's the one he did with PK Martin on leadership. Um,
Oh
it's
yeah.
uh, it's a faith-based
Ah.
book. I'll send you the notes on it. Um, Grown Up Questions. That's what it's called. I think is the title. Grown Up Questions.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that sounds
And we
intriguing.
diverge. So back to your book. Um, One action that was real, like when you talk about permission slips and taking bold action, and that step where you said, oh, I can't do this. And you kind of went back and you hit, and then you kind of stepped up and said, I got to do it. And it probably took, like most of us, 3, 4, 10, 20, 30 cycles. Looking back, which one of those felt like, okay, it all just changed?
Which step did I
But
take
where you
where
felt
it
like,
seemed like
man,
everything just
that
changed?
was the moment of change. That was like where I went from here to there.
Okay, so I'm going to go with my gut thought. It may not be where you want me to go with this, but I'll go with it just because it came up. A couple years I was doing a training with the company, and I got off track. I just was confused, and it was a lot of information that I was taking them through. And Probably not as bad as I am making it out to be, but it was just one of those things where I really questioned, okay, can I keep doing this? Is this what I really want? This is so grueling and so defeating. And I remember just feeling so low, almost came close to quitting. And somebody reached out to me who knew what happened, and they shared with me the biggest time they failed. They're a massive success now, but they shared their biggest failure with me in a text just minutes after I left, and they shared with me what they did to get back up. And it was, for me, kind of a formula, nothing earth shattering or fancy, but just something that I'm like, okay, if I do this, 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 and this, and repeat it over and over and over again, and look at these failures that I just dusted, it was like having cuts on my knees. I just dusted the dirt off my knees. And I'm like, okay, I am more willing to fail and do this than go back to where I was, than go back to hiding. It was too painful for me to go back to my comfort zone, my little bubble. And that saying, I have not come this far to only come this far, just became my mantra.
Ooh.
And it's just, yeah. And so I had that on my mirror. Just ask my husband. Had it just different things plastered all over, um, just because I needed that to be my anchor daily, because it would have been so
I
easy to
love that
quit.
because there's a song that he hasn't brought me this far to leave me alone.
Mm,
And I love that. I haven't come this far just to come this far.
yeah.
And taking that next bold step and saying, okay, this is not the end. This is not where I'm finished. Led you into going into the John Maxwell organization, becoming a coach, becoming a speaker, exploring boldness in your life. And the way you describe it throughout the book, it's you realize in hindsight in some ways that you had been giving yourself permission, but you had never really like fully blossomed into the permission. And then learning like, how do I 10x this, which is the popular term of the day? How do I 10x my boldness to creating my life? What is the thing that you see next as your next big bold step?
Wow. Um, mm, okay. So it feels scary sharing this, but I have been working, collaborating with an amazing team for a couple of years, who are really looking to solve the problem of isolation in different populations. People with aphasia, they've lost their speech through brain trauma. Um, People with PTSD, veterans, people with other medical conditions. And so, and even elderly. So they're isolated, but there's also isolation in the corporate world. There's isolation everywhere. You don't have to be physically isolated, but to really help someone to re-engage in life again, or re-engage with their team, so they have this sense of belonging and they're able to give back and contribute to the world. So a lot of this is research based, combined with creative coaching and some technologies. Uh, so that's like my big bold. When I think of that, I think of this being something far beyond I ever imagined to be able to do. And this is in the process of now, going into phase 2. They've done years of research, and now they're taking the next step.
How
So yeah,
exciting.
that's an exciting one
But
for
I
me.
love
Yeah.
the and see that's the thing about living bold is you could see, you know, the reflection and the little bit of fear, and then you got a little small, but as you began to see the vision growing, you could see your body language and your face and everything start to open up. Like this will be so cool if we nail it, if we get through phase 2.
Yeah. So I think where my heart is coming from that is, there have been times where I've felt isolated, very alone. And there have been family members who have been completely isolated. So I've seen the impact it has on their ability to engage in life, to connect with people, to even function. So to be able to give back, and I truly believe, we've heard that saying, it can be cliche, our mess is our message, but I really feel like when we can combine our strengths with our challenges, our weakness, that's when things take a whole nother dimension in our life. It's great to work in our sweet spot, but when we can really bring it back full circle and just repurpose our pain, we're able to offer something even more amazing to the world.
Repurpose our pain into an amazing gift for the world. I love that perspective because so often,
I know it's deep,
I
but
think in our
yeah.
spaces, in your space as a thought leader and as a coach and a trainer and a speaker, we sometimes use our pain or our tragedy to show our success. Like, look, I used to be homeless, and I had 6 kids, and we had the cat. Like, we tell all that painful story, but we quickly leap to the success as part of our sales pitch, I think sometimes, as opposed to, I love that idea of going back and looking at my pain and ask, how can I use that pain to bring a gift into the world? How can I connect back into that pain now that I'm stronger, healthier, healed, and stand in it so I can have the perspective of those that are still experiencing it? And then all of us get elevated as opposed to running away from it. I
Mm,
love that perspective. With your permission,
mm.
I wanted to read the Bold Manifesto, unless you want to read it.
Oh, I'll let you read it. I'd love to
Uh-oh,
hear
I'm
it
gonna
in your
have to
voice.
use wait a minute, my Roddy speak the written word, or however he does it. So it's on page 143. As Barbara had alluded to, it is sort of her Cliff Notes version of the whole book, even though I think she really um, like, there's a lot more in this book than fits on page 143 in the top of the next. So it's titled The Bold Manifesto. It is time to unleash your inner bold. It is time to live life with courage. Start by giving yourself permission. Permission to step boldly. Permission to be you. Stop seeking approval from others. Stop playing Mother May I. Start playing the lead role in your story. The life you are to live, the one that God has set for you, is about a choice. The choice to be bold. Boldness is not a feeling or a gift others will grant. Give yourself consent. Consent to push through obstacles. Consent to think different and create new results. Stand up. Let your light shine brightly so that others can find their way. You were made for a purpose. You were made to stand tall. Don't apologize for being you. Grow and grow slowly. Breathe and breathe deep. Take time to have fun. You can't rush a masterpiece. Let go of taking life too seriously. Being present is your superpower. Pay it forward, create an ongoing ripple effect, make leading a lifetime goal. Bet on you, bet on your life, bet on your future. You have a hope and a dream. Trust your journey and the one who created you. You are on a mission to love, to live, and lead fully. Go, be bold. Leave your mark on the world. I,
You got it. Great job,
I
Eric.
love that. I was like, after tonight, I was
Mm.
gonna like cut this out and then put it on my board where I see my inspirational thoughts. It's just so many affirmations and so many statements of what our purpose is here. Um, I just I love the way you wrote it. I love the way you spoke, the language that you used. I have a question on where you what is the mark that you want to leave on the world? Like, when it's all finished and done.
Mm. Yeah, I've thought about that. It's something I revisit every few months, just because I feel like I get clear. I truly want people to believe that they do have a purpose and they matter. They have value, and they have something to give to the world. Just because I feel like sometimes we get busy and we work, we help people, but we also question, are we really making a difference? Is what we're doing, does that really matter? And for me, that's something that I've questioned all my life. I love helping people, but I truly didn't know my strengths, what my unique, piece of that pie was. And when I was able to kind of fill that in, that was my fuel, for basically living. That got me through day to day. But it's really helping someone understand that, they do have what it takes, to contribute and to, yeah, yeah. And that piece about masterpiece, I truly believe, we are a masterpiece, but we're also trying to live someone else's script, just to be able to get through the day or to be able to, have a living. And it looks different for every one of us, but we have to be willing to go deep to see what that masterpiece is. So I'm going to have to chew on that some more, but that's something I think
So,
about a
and
lot.
I
A great
my,
question.
there, I love it all, but I love that grow and grow slowly, breathe and breathe deep, take time to have fun. You can't rush a masterpiece. I could almost do that in my Dr. Seuss voice. Um, grow and grow slowly,
Hey,
breathe and breathe deep. Take time to have fun. You can't rush a masterpiece.
I
Uh,
love it. I love it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to record that, the
Dr.
whole
Seuss
thing.
talk, that I'll have to like get into character for that. So when you said that
Mhm.
the mark that you want to leave on the world is to allow people to know that they matter, they have value, that they have a purpose, they have a passion, they have a reason for being, that they are a masterpiece. I always like to, how do you tell yourself that every day? What intentional action do you do to remind yourself? Because it's so easy for us in the counseling space to sometimes do it for others and neglect self. How do you maintain that in yourself?
I don't think it's one thing I tell myself every day. It's usually through whatever I'm going through. Like if I'm going through a particular season, there's usually something, a word or a mantra that I'm needing to hear. This season is own it. Just because I finally discovered what my strengths are. I feel like there's more. In fact, for anybody out there who's exploring that, there's wonderful assessments. Just know that can point you in the right direction, but there's also other stuff inside you that are strengths and gifts that's waiting to come out. So for me, it's not just knowing what they are, but embracing it. And for me, it's owning it. Just because once I knew what they are, it's like, okay, if you don't do anything with it, it really doesn't matter. And that story of the talents in the Bible, the parable, so I see myself as the one who buried the strengths. At first I didn't know what they were, and then I did, and then I buried them and didn't do
Ooh,
anything with them. And so I had to really own that piece of it,
that could hurt.
and choose to own my strengths. Yeah, yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow, but it was so true.
I love that. So own it is your mantra for the year. Creating
Yeah.
impact.
So it,
The next bold move is to help those that are in corporate and private isolation. I think that is so interesting, especially the idea that you sit in your cube every day surrounded by dozens of people and yet you feel isolated. And I've been in corporate America and I know what those adult playpens feel like sometimes. That like suddenly you look over and one of them is empty and you're like, when did they leave? Yeah,
I like that
that's what I
adult
used to call them.
playpen.
It's like everybody back in
Yeah.
your playpen. I don't have time to manage you.
But yeah, but I think it goes further because we often do get disconnected with people, but I think it really originates. There's a disconnect, with ourselves, and often a disconnect with God, and it really starts there. And when we're able to fully connect with ourselves, that's when we can really um, start engaging with people in a significant way, not just on a superficial level, but really coming together and everybody using their strengths together to create something even bigger.
So again, you guys, we're talking permission to be bold. I always feel like I have to do it this way. Permission to be bold. I love
Well,
it. I love the cleanness too. A guide to loving yourself, living fully, leaving your mark on the world. So I'm sitting at home. I just watched this really great interview with this author of this book called Permission to be Bold. It clicks off, and I tell myself, well, she just doesn't get it. I've got kids. My husband doesn't understand me. I've got a 2.5 hour commute. We're behind on our mortgage. We're in debt on our credit card. I'm fat. I'm overweight. I'm a woman. I'm a man. I'm a person of color. I don't have a college education. I can't make a change. It sounds easy for her because she's just like so fabulous, but I can't. You have their direct phone
so
number.
yeah. Oh, wow. I really feel like someone has to be hungry because when someone's hungry, they'll find a way to make a change, um, even one small change. I've talked to people who have wanted to change this and that, and they had every reason why they couldn't. But when we would sit down to talk, there was at least one small thing they could do. If you look at, here are the things that are not in my control, but here are the things that are in my control. If they weren't hungry, they weren't even going to do the things in their control. So I really feel like it begins with a hunger, a strong desire to want something different and um, to realize that what they're seeing on the surface, there's more to that. So I totally get that there are situations where it's hard to create change. I've been in some myself, especially with seasons of health with my family, and being in a caretaker as a mom, with one of my sons, especially, and not being able to work just because I was afraid to leave the house. I get that there's seasons in our life, but there, I believe that when we're hungry, we can still thrive even in those difficult seasons. Even if there's one thing that we can do to thrive, whatever that is. For me, it was giving myself 5 minutes of peace behind a locked door, two locked doors sometimes. Oh, let's be honest. So I think that we can easily talk out of ourselves and say, I've tried everything. For me, that's giving up. I don't mean to be rude, but it really is an excuse because if we want something bad enough, we will find a way to get it. Um, so that's sometimes the harsh truth, but as a coach, I'm not there to let people accept their excuses. I'm there to help them learn to think differently. Um,
I, and I and
yeah,
I and I
that's
have
just
to
where I
agree
stand.
because I think sometimes, and maybe less as a coach, but when you're in your community of friends and family and your office mates, everybody wants to keep everybody at average because then somebody has to start to perform if one person shifts. So they'll agree, they'll reach agreement. When I confront that as a coach, I'll often like, okay, I understand the condition. How do you feel? I understand the condition. Like, are you really in touch with how bad this feels to you? Or are you so distracted by all the reasons you can't make the change you haven't? Because once you connect to that pain, once you connect to like, I can't go on breathing this way, that I think can help awaken the hunger. But I think you're right that as long as you're blaming the world, you haven't identified the hunger for change. And it doesn't have to be massive, great, monstrous change. It just has to be awareness that I'm going to take a book to work with me every day. And instead of sitting in the gossip group, I'm going to sit and read. And I'm going to slowly feed my mind new thoughts and new ideas and new beliefs. And I'm going to slowly grow out of the situation that I'm in so I'm prepared for the next, or, whatever it is. But I love that idea that it's not going to change until you get hungry. And the external circumstances will never truly make you hungry. They'll just continue to change and adapt to your excuses.
Mm, yeah, and one of the things that, because I when about 7 or 8 years ago when I started to dive into this, I was very hungry. I didn't know exactly what I was
Ooh.
hungry for, but there was this thing inside of me. And so sometimes it's a challenge to find out what that hunger is too, but just knowing that if you just keep following its lead, eventually it's going to lead you to it. Because it can be discouraging, when you're hungry and you can't find what it is you're hungry for. I don't know if that
It
makes
does,
sense to you.
and I think it
But it
changes
just,
as our awareness grows. I'm hungry in the sense of I no longer want to live like this. Well, what is this? I don't know, but I just know it's
yeah.
not where I'm supposed to be.
Hmm.
Okay, so now tune yourself into where you feel like you should be. Oh, now we're starting to move in the direction out of discomfort and into pleasure, and that makes me more hungry sometimes. So yeah, you may not know exactly what you're hungry for, but you'll know what you no longer want to put up with.
Yes. And I've realized that clarity is not an event, it's a process, it's an ongoing process. And it's better to step forward, even if it's a little tiny clear or even muddled, than to wait to get full clarity. It's far greater just because it's for me, it was better to take tiny steps, but to act right away, just to create that forward movement. And once I got that momentum going, things started to get clearer. I don't want to say clear because I'm still gaining
It's
clarity,
like going to the
but
eye doctor. Better,
yeah.
worse, about the same. Better, and it's like,
Oh my
good
goodness.
Lord, dude,
Yes.
there's no difference.
So for me, it was like a big cloud of fog for the longest time. I knew something was on the other side. I wasn't quite sure, but it's just you have to walk through
Well,
that
and I
fog.
and I love where you summarize with boldness isn't about taking giant leaps. Boldness can be quiet, internal steps. It's often these small steps that lead to greater transformation and allows us to live the life we were designed to have. Fear, doubt, and overwhelm, however, keep us from giving ourselves permission to take our journey of self-discovery. They leave us settling for an uninspired life of ordinary and safe. I what I hope everybody takes away is that understanding that when we talk about permission to be bold, it's not about rushing first into the room, loudest on the stage, biggest, it's not about being brass and loud. It's about taking courage and stepping forward, even if it's like the smallest step. I know when we did our test drive, you said yesterday you had never done something like this, and now you're like, oh, I'm a master of it.
Not quite, but
You're
I'm
doing
getting there.
fabulous. And according to everybody on my side of the screen, who you'll get to see later, there's Joe, there's Melanie Massey, there's Helen, there's Don. I saw a couple other people.
Aw,
Everybody take
hey
a moment,
guys.
say hi, share it out. Hashtag permission to be bold. Let her know you were in the room. It's really important that you let the author know you're in the room. This is a lonely process writing the book. Trust me. I coach a lot of people. Now that I've read some 25 books from fellow thought leaders already this year, I've coached quite a few people on this is not easy because
It's
there's the
yeah,
exposing and
it's
then there's the
it's
hiding.
not.
And you have to sort of find the
Oh my
balance in the
goodness.
place.
And in writing about bold from an introvert's perspective, that was really interesting to go through because I question. I'm like, I sometimes wonder if I have, a bold bone in my body, but I know I do. But writing it from an introvert perspective, wondering how that's going to be taken, for me that was a bold leap in itself. But I realized boldness is inside everyone. It looks different, from person to person, and they get to decide whatever boldness means to them. That's the beauty of it. We get to decide what happiness is, what love is. We get to decide what our boldness is, and we don't have to listen to other people to tell us what our bold is. We don't. Otherwise, we're never going to feel like we're doing enough. We're not enough. And that for me, I feel like is an important thing to do is, what is your bold and what does that look like for you? Maybe not for your whole life, but in the season that you're in right now, because it might look differently a couple months down the road, but to revisit that
And
often.
and I love that. As you were saying, that boldness looks different for some of us. So as an introvert, or as we talked about you being a CS or SC, depending on the hour of the day, boldness to you is doing something like this, like being out here on.
Oh yeah.
Whereas someone like me
Hmm.
who is an I, boldness is sometimes shutting up and being silent and learning to be
Yeah. So it's
patient.
whatever stretches you.
Whatever
Hmm.
causes you to become something that you weren't the day before, that was an intentional action of becoming a better you, is a bold act. And so I love the fact that you encourage us to take bold acts. I love the idea of the permission slips. You guys, there you go. Melanie Massey was here. She's probably still in the room. I bet by the time you get to IMC, she's going to have like little paper cutouts. I give myself permission too. And you
Okay.
can probably stop
I
by
have
and
to
pick them
tell
up.
you, yes,
Barb, you're going to be at IMC, correct?
yes. And so I have to tell you, she is making me permission slips.
Oh,
That's already in the
you
works.
guys steal my ideas and I don't even get licensing fees?
Isn't it a good one? Yes. I'll
Oh,
share it with
man.
you.
Okay, so we can have guy permission slips and girl permission slips. How's that? Um,
There you
but
go.
yeah,
Hmm.
so and Helen is here. She's can't wait to read the book. So Helen, get on Amazon, get it
Hey,
from
Helen.
Amazon Prime. It'll be in your mailbox probably by Wednesday. Take it to IMC. You'll get an autographed copy from the author. She'll be stopped in the hall. She'll be signing books. People will be freaking out. It will be fun. And you can get your permission slip. That will be so much fun. So I'm going to start this, and it probably won't happen, but I'm going to throw it out there. People have to get their permission slip, get it filled out, and then come to you to get it signed.
Look what you
You're going to be
started, Eric.
swamped with people saying, I need my
Thank you.
permission slip signed. And your response is going to be, no, you get to sign your own. You're a grown up.
I'll say it's Eric. I'll say send it to Eric.
I'll be like, look, you don't need no permission slip. You don't know me, people. I charge ahead. I give my percent. So I give myself permission to. Melanie Massey has probably already got it worked out. You know it's going to be gorgeous. She'll be a creation statement with that, or a station with that.
Oh, she's amazing.
I can't even write my name that it's legible, and she like whips out creations just in her sleep. Her giftedness inspires us, and I'm so grateful she so freely shares it with everybody. So moving back to the book, it's finished, it's sealed, it's up on Amazon, it's getting great reviews. How are you going to take it to the next level? What is your next audience? I know you're working on the isolation thing, but are you doing any masterminds, work studies? What is like the next level? After I've read the book, how do I get back into you and into your space and into the conversation?
Yes. So I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and say, hey, I want to bring my team through this, or, women's group through this. So they can do so by using the questions at the end of the chapter. I'm also creating a kind of like a 5-week mastermind, 5 to 6 week mastermind group over the next few months. It's going to be a freebie just to kind of take as an intro, through the book, as a group. I'm also using the chapters as a framework for retreats that I'm doing with women, as well as an online program. So I have a few things in the work this year, so stay tuned. So super
What is the
excited
best
about
place
those.
for them to see these things coming up and coming live? Or is there a newsletter list or an opt-in? See, I'm going to take it to the whole, opt-in landing
Mm,
page kind of thing, because that's just the techie group guy
gotcha.
in me.
So they can go to my website, discovernextstep.com. That's STEP.com. And so you can get, actually, you can get, if you go to free stuff, you can get a copy of the Bold
Oh,
Manifesto that you read earlier. You can
I
download it.
want Melanie Massey to make it like
There's,
one of these things, though.
oh, I think that's
And
a
then we
great
could
idea.
sell them
That's
on the internet.
fantastic.
See, sorry.
Okay, I'll let you sell them for me. Um, and then there's also, you can download a couple free chapters of my book as well, just to get a taste of that, chapters 1 and 2. And then you can connect with me there. I have a Facebook group unleash your
Oh, I
inner
love that.
bold. And so this is, yeah, and so this is a group, it's about the smaller consistent steps. Consistency sounds boring, but it truly is, what are you doing daily to stretch yourself? And for me, boldness is stretching, not to the point where you snap, but you're stepping forward into growth, kind of the law of the rubber band. So, each day is a little bit different, what's your next bold move, for this week. So it's kind of a small community for people to
That's
encourage each other, want them to take ownership and, just create their own
And I
bold.
want to
Yeah.
encourage you guys to really get in connection with people that are thinking the same way as you are. So often, for me personally, I may connect with a group for a week, or I may connect for a month, or I may connect for a year because we share a common thought, we share a common language, we're going through the same thing together. And out there in this big, bustling, crazy, chaotic world, it's sometimes hard to have a conversation about, well, my bold step today was, and it may seem small, but because you're in a community of like-minded people, they understand that that could be a really huge moment, and they celebrate that. And so do connect
Absolutely.
with the Facebook group. Do think about taking it as a workshop, or bringing Barbara in as a workshop coordinator to you and your team, because the more people that are surrounding you in the same language and the same song, pretty soon you're going to feel more empowered to create those bold changes in your life. And so, reading the book, love the book, read the book, but continue to engage with the book and the author and the communities that authors set up, because that's where the transformation really begins to deep dive and dig in. My book went down here, so you get to talk to them while I go pick back up. It fell off my table.
Okay, so while he's doing it, he was cracking me up earlier. He was holding my book up. Mine is kind of doing it, but he was holding like this, and it looked like permission to be old.
Lord, at my age, I don't
So
need
I
permission.
just
I already own it.
So I just turned 50 this year, and I call it my midlife awakening. And so when I saw someone holding it, I'm like, okay, God, I'm giving myself permission to be old too.
Well,
But
I'm well past 50, so I'm going to take permission to be old. Or we could do it this way. Well, I can't make it a G. Melanie could. It really, I thank you so much for writing the book. And as I said, when I get an opportunity to read the book, and every one of you authors that sends me a book, I do sit down and read it. My reading skills are getting much faster as a result. But I do feel it's important to read the book before meeting with the author, because not only do I learn here, but I get to hear the voice and connect to the voice. And so as you pick up a book, especially if you know the author, connect back with them, talk with them. This is an act of love, not an act of profit. I mean, even Oprah doesn't make much money off her books, because that's just the way it goes in the publishing world. This is a gift that authors often give to a community that they can't physically be involved with. So reconnect to those authors. It means a lot to them, and it also deepens the experience for you as a reader. Parting thoughts for our group as we wrap up the hour here.
mm, it's it's easy to get caught up in the doing of life. It really is. And I was sharing with the group last week how we can easily get into the fast and furious of life. It's good to have a harmony and combine, the being with the doing. But one of the things that I've just recently learned is to really honor my journey. Don't try to press too hard. Really honor your journey, honor where you've been, just because that has allowed you to get to where you're at now. Um, this is not where you're going to stay. You're going to move forward, but just give yourself that permission, to take that next step forward, even if it's scary, even if it doesn't make sense, even if people aren't on board with you, but in your heart this is the direction you want to go.
I
But
love
yeah,
that. Like you said, you can't rush a masterpiece.
that's right, you
And
can't.
the book was phenomenal. I wish I could go on a women's retreat, but I'll tell you, you JMT women, you are cracking out some fabulous retreats. Us men folk, we're failing at that. I
Hey, you could start a retreat for men.
have to do Alan Bracken. We'll go fly helicopters with him.
Hey, that sounds fun.
Up on the Blue Ridge Mountain Trail. Thank you again for being available for Author Talk. Thank you for sharing your book with me. Everybody, remember, you now have permission. And so, hashtag, I give myself permission today to do, to be whatever. Go ahead and state it out loud, because what I know from my own experiences, it's really easy for me to be like, oh yeah, I give myself permission to be bold. And I keep it in here. But as soon as I speak it, and we know that, the word became, as soon as we're willing to start speaking those words out loud, and the first time it may only be a whisper, as soon as you speak it, it becomes who you are. And so give yourself permission to be bold. Give yourself permission to laugh. Give yourself permission to do what you need to do to begin to move to who you want to be. Because nobody else is going to give you the permission slip. And even if they do, you're not going to recognize it until you're hungry for it. So I love the lessons that you taught in the book. I love what you're going to continue to do and grow through the book and the lives you're going to teach and touch. And so good on you, as we say down in Australia. Good on you for such a great job. Good on
Good
you.
on you. I like that.
It's like I always see it as covering
Eric,
yourself in a whole bunch of good.
This has been great. Thank you for inviting me to the conversation. I enjoying getting to know you, and I just love what you're doing to make an impact. I see your videos, and well, you've got some great people coming up. I'm
It's a lot of
excited.
fun. Yeah, Donna Rice is Friday, Fun Friend
Yeah,
Friday. She's really nervous. So you'll have to like
awesome.
message her and say, oh, it's a piece of cake.
Oh, I just recently met her. I love talking to her. So you're
It'll
in
be easy
for
for
a
me
good
on
treat.
Friday. Is that it?
Yeah.
A value to others and easy for me
She's
is
a
a way to
lovely
round out a
person.
week. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight for Author Talk. Again, if you're an author or if you know an author and somebody that's created a book in the thought, personal growth, business growth mindset, I'd love to sit down and read it and then bring them into this arena of Author Talk so that we can all grow and learn together. I will be back here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for another Success Life Live. And then we have Donna on Friday for Fun Friend Friday. Barbara, you're gonna, when we finish up, if you could sort of drop into the comments and put those web links so that everybody can follow your journey and also get the free downloads and things like that.
Absolutely.
I mean, you guys, you get
I
the
can do
Bold
that.
Manifesto and 2 chapters of the book while you wait for it to arrive from Amazon. So how much better could that be, everybody? You've got like all kinds of hearts you're gonna have to respond to, all kinds of shares and thank yous and applause.
Oh, I can't
You
wait.
just got a huge fan club.
Oh, well, thank you everyone for being on, and thank you,
You're
Eric.
welcome.
This has
And
been fun.
I will talk to you soon. Good night, everybody. And thank you again for joining us for Author Talk. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.